I'm working on a video all about the Heathers franchise, which is taking time to research, mostly because the 2018 series is just so painful to watch. I like to keep things positive on this channel, but I will be ripping into some stuff in that video, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to do a shorter video celebrating something I like. I will be criticising some other Starkid musicals, but just know that I like all of them for the most part, and the creativity and effort put into all of them is undeniable. The Trail to Oregon is the 9th original musical by Team Starkid and also happens to be objectively the best one. I shall now prove this with science. But as you guys know, I love going into unnecessary detail, so first a little backstory. The Trail to Oregon was first performed as an accompanying or alternate show to the more ambitious Annie, a parody, in 2014. It ran for the summer of that year with 22 performances before having a limited run of 8 performances in May 2015. The recorded show was uploaded to YouTube in February 2015, between the two runs. As mentioned, it was kind of the sidekick to the larger production of Annie, and is for the most part Jeff Blim's baby, as he wrote the music and lyrics, as well as co-authoring the book with Matt and Nick Lang. It only requires 6 actors playing multiple roles, which is equal parts confusing and amusing at times. It is definitely the little show that could, and I believe somehow manages to have better characters and humour, more entertaining choreography, and catchier songs than most any other Starkid musical. So let's explore this masterpiece. The Trail to Oregon revolves primarily around a family dynamic. I'm normally not a huge fan of stories centred around families, as it is normally presumed that being related to someone carries some inherent importance, and they usually resolve issues purely by being reminded that they are in fact a family, and not because anyone actually makes up for being a garbage person. But this one is different in that they are all portrayed as having strong bonds between them that mean they can actually work to help each other out when they need to, and learn to be better as a result. The character writing is impeccable, as we'll get to later, and it's just nice to see a husband and wife that are on the brink of breaking up at points, but still actually care for each other. No, I hate my wife. Boomer energy here. From my experience of watching amateur comedians, another thing that is normally a bad idea is audience participation, but here it's actually really fun. The fact that the audience gets to pick the name of the characters and even the outcome of the story doesn't cause issues, as if the cast forget their names midway, it's just part of the fun. The musical feels very personal as a result, as each performance is unique, and I think that that is the perfect encapsulation of what a Starkid musical is, especially since their first project came out while they were still amateurs in university. Oregon frequently breaks the fourth wall and doesn't take itself too seriously until it needs to. The names of the family in the YouTube version are the infamous Jack Bauer, Slippery When Wet, Mouthface, Craphole, and Titty Mitty, respectively, but they have gone by many names. Some of my favourites include Sloppy Seconds, Rumple Foreskin, Quentin Tarantino, and Quirion Lannister. I will leave a link to the semi-complete list of names from all the performances in the description. The family dynamic and audience participation especially make for a very intimate show, unlike, say, the most recent on-stage production, Black Friday. I personally found the characters in that one strangely unlikable and mean-spirited, and I think that's the point. It's a much more mature story about really broken people. And of course I was joking, although not really, that the Trail to Oregon is the overall best. It's the best at what it sets out to do. For many, Twisted is a strong contender for the best Starkid musical, and I can see that. It is definitely the best of their parody-style shows, but if Twisted is the strongest of their parodies, and the guy who didn't like musicals, their original shows, don't mind me just dropping hot takes all over the place, then Oregon is the greatest of their personal amateur shows, which is what appeals most to me. We are introduced to the characters through our opening number, Gone to Oregon, which is suitably energetic and explains all that we need to know about how the show works with some fun quips. We are also seen introduced to the show's greater themes, which it has, kinda? Like, I'm not sure if they're intentional, and I can't quite figure out what they're trying to say, but the family, named by the audience collectively as the Dick Rats, constantly run into random obstacles on their journey, a reference to the structure of the original game, which they put down to divine intervention. Starkid musicals don't usually have explicit themes. Twisted has some interesting commentary on Disney in the early 2000s, and the shows frequently have morals and feminist messages, but nothing particularly abstract or existential like is alluded to here. The fourth wall is later smashed through entirely to include the audience in the story as the Watchers and reinforce that they must choose someone to die at the end, again alluding to the fact that there are stronger forces at work controlling the family's destiny. Like, I am willing to go full literature student here. You bet I will look at those curtains and diagnose you with sad. But whatever the case, it does make you think a little harder about the show and hints at some existential ideas that tie into the main themes of family and responsibility. The Dick Rats are ready to head off down the Oregon Trail, but first they must stop at the town of Independence for one of the best musical numbers right out of the gate. Joey basically does a one-man show as all the members of the town in order to warn them of the myriad of dangers they are to face on the road, before settling on the sleazy general store guy. Elaborate choreography hasn't been a huge staple of Starkid musicals, and Oregon's isn't particularly complicated, but has some really funny moments and certainly keeps the limited cast on their feet. The 2 opening songs go a long way to hint at future troubles that will plague the Dick Rats on the trail. The script writing here, whether it be structural or scene to scene, is amazingly tight. Hardly a word is wasted, but again they have the freedom to go off script on select occasions. I feel like this is another strength this show has over other Starkid productions. While of course I've praised the amateur feel, sometimes the improv can bring other stories to a screeching halt, or the shows can lose their focus for a bit while they focus on an elongated joke scene. Also, sometimes dialogue suffers from lol random syndrome, but here this is not the case. Even Grandpa's historic battle with the lobsters, which seems like a lol random moment, becomes important later. Once introduced to the town of Independence, the group find themselves in need of a wagon, and we begin to find out, if it wasn't already obvious, that Jack Bauer is not the most rotund wagon wheel on the trail, if you track my convoluted metaphor. This is the start of his arc, where he must step up and take responsibility for his mistakes in order to humble himself and work with the rest of the family to get to their destination. All the characters have mini arcs, but his is front and centre. Again, it's a testament to the writing that they managed to have the time for all of them in the 2-hour show. Speaking of which, Mouthface finds herself enthralled by McDoon, who makes the ladies McSwoon. She finds him mighty attractive, and he does her.
If I saw him, I'd scream.
And the two of them flirt. As they do, it becomes clear that McDoon may in fact be the mysterious outlaw, the Bandit King. But we can't forget the other woman in McDoon's life, the one and only Cletus Jones. Their dynamic is brilliant, and they are well worthy of joining the pantheon of great dumbass villain duos. However, Slippery When Wet comes to put a stop to these shenanigans. She gaslight gatekeep girl bosses the advances of McDoon.
My child bride! Okay, please and thank you!
Managing to create an enemy for life in the process. Craphole, meanwhile, played by the wonderful Lauren Lopez, is going through an arc, if you could call it that, learning such lessons as what not to put in his mouth, and dreaming of going skinny dipping. It has been said before, and will be said again, the characterisation in this show is just spot on. I watched the show with my mum, who works with young kids, and it just blew her mind how accurate it was to how young children act, and makes for some hilarious scenes. Jack Bauer manages to obtain a wagon with hexagonal wheels and an ox, as long as your definition of an ox is a shambling horny corpse with a mouth hole. Nevertheless, the gang are away on their journey. This is a road trip musical, the perfect vehicle for the interpersonal drama that is to come. The source material for the musical, we can all acknowledge, is odd. Like musicals do choose very unique things to adapt, such as the lives of the wives of Henry VIII, or a cult 80s movie, or a bunch of slave owners who dance to hip-hop. But an obscure 1970s text adventure game takes the cake. But it's nice that there is a genuine love for the source material, which goes largely unappreciated by many people, myself included. The Oregon Trail, I never played it. Like, what? Why would I? It's ancient. I'm not that pretentious. But it is the subject of the song, The Grind, which is not the show's strongest, but reminds us that Lauren is the best, and we get a family dance break. So it's great. A couple of days pass on the road.
Cricket. Cricket, cricket. Cock-a-doodle-doo!
And the gang end up hopelessly low on resources, which is compounded by young Craphole deciding to randomly throw items off the back of the wagon. Okay, I'm invoking reviewer dibs right now. There is a paper to be written on the themes of this musical, I swear. Maybe it's like how everything in our lives is cosmically out of our hands, and no matter how hard we try to wrestle back control, we are inevitably spinning towards a set conclusion, and nothing means anything except our continued procreation and survival.
No! Oh my god!
Or maybe it can best be summarised as sometimes it pays to be an animal, sometimes don't. The most pure comedy song in the musical. Craphole is made to go with Titty Mitty and Mouthface in order to find them some more food as he decorated the trail with their rations. Titty Mitty does seem at first a bit one note, but like the others he has a lot more going on. Primarily lobster related goings on, but also feelings of inadequacy. Also, the little interactions between Craphole and Mouthface are not frequent, but convey everything you need to know about their sibling rivalry. Craphole is forced to kill a family of buffalo and can hear them begging. A bit like how Luke hears animals in the Professor Layton series. Unfortunately, this is one thing that doesn't come back in a massive way, like you'd think Craphole would get to ask an animal to help out later on, but it doesn't happen, which is one of the only missed opportunities. Back at the camp, we get a great scene between Slippery and the supposedly ungrateful Mouthface. Slippery pretends to die, seeing as she is apparently so horrible and unfair, and it's a touching and hilarious moment. Honestly, if you can convince them, watch this with your family or parents, because it's just so much fun. Unless you have shitty parents, I guess, in which case, watch it with my parents. I'm sure they'd be glad to. It's up there in terms of quality family viewing with My Neighbour Totoro and 365 Days. Slippery gets her own song, When the World's at Stake, that makes me sad, and then takes her long-suffering self over to the lovely Jack Bauer. As I said, it's nice to have a husband and wife that at least have the embers of their marriage still burning. He described the emotions I'm feeling when Jack breaks the fourth wall to play some saucy music in order to woo Slippery, but unfortunately they are rudely interrupted by a snake. Jeff's comedic performance here makes me cry with laughter. He's just perfect, but unfortunately he swallows some snake venom and begins to trip out. Dysentery World begins, where we are introduced to the aforementioned concept of the Watchers and the mysterious and gross threat of dysentery that hangs over them. When he finally recovers, we get my favourite moment in a whole show of great moments.
Don't you ever die!
What?
Don't you ever die!
Okay!
But snake venom is soon to be the least of their worries, as the Bandit King is back. Okay, scratch what I just said. Lauren Lopez in Wagon on Fire is my favourite moment. In anything. Ever. The Bandit King makes off with Malface, and the family lose what little hope they had as we move into the intermission. Just a little thing, but I love when there's a mini reprise at the end of an act where different voices sing different parts of songs. We don't really have theatre kids over here in the UK, so please cut me some slack on the terminology. Like, we have drama students, but it's not so much of a thing. Lost Without You is probably musically the most impressive song on the soundtrack. Jamie Lynn Betty has some real pipes on her. It's really heartfelt and there aren't a lot of funny lines in it, just a nice emotional moment as Malface wishes to be with the rest of the Dick Rats again. It's not quite as powerful as, say, What Tim Wants from Black Friday, or any of the number of ballads in other shows, but along with When My World's at Stake, it allows Oregon to have a really diverse roster of different types of exciting, comedic and emotional songs on its soundtrack. And back with the rest of the family, spirits aren't much higher, and the Mike's Hard Lemonade isn't helping. Is this some kind of in-joke that I'm not Starkid enough to understand? Whatever the case, Slippery trades her wedding ring for a real drink, which is heartbreaking. There are a lot of great emotional moments in the Starkid pantheon, such as the relationship between Jafar and Sherazade in Twisted, but for me, while it may be a little bit cliched, it is nonetheless affecting because the characters are so likeable and you want to see them make it through together. But Joey, as always, also makes it hilarious.
Just got my hopes up for a second there!
Whatever the case, it is most definitely our end of Act 2 low point, baby. If anyone ever watches these, and please don't, and I have to make some merch, I can just see myself selling out and putting that on a t-shirt that no one will buy, so please don't watch my stuff so that never has to happen. For a while here we just get to see Jeff shine, as Jack Bauer has to deal with his family considering him a loser and abandoning him to search for Malface on their own. He starts off having lost all hope, which then progresses to complete comedic disbelief as Titty Mitty decides now is the time to reveal that not only did he not banish any lobsters to the sea, they in fact banished him to the land. This unfortunately doesn't seem to help Jack feel any better or give him any new motivation to fix the situation. However, who else should walk into this tavern but the general store guy? And this is Jeff's most impressive acting moment, channeling full Jack Nicholson perfectly as he finally stands up for himself and gets his wagon.
For free!
There are so many fan videos compiling the best Starkid moments, and this one features in so many of them for a good reason. Jeff always seems to get cast as a character that has the potential to go buck wild or be sociopathic, and I think he's found his successful niche. Also, Joey's improv line gets me every time.
It's like big fish, small pond, but I was proud.
But no time for all that. Jack Bauer has got a family to reunite and a daughter to save. This calls for a speedrun. Jack brings his new state-of-the-art wagon to meet up with Slippery and Craphole, and Slippery powers them down the trail. It's got just as much energy as Together from Firebringer, and gets you pumped for the Dick Rats to rescue one of their own. Meanwhile, we finally get some more comedic stylings between Cletus, Malface and the Bandit King, with some of the best moments yet. Malface tries to make an exit through the crowd, but is unsuccessful, and it seems like she may be doomed to have her wagon corked until the day she dies, whatever that means. The wagon is successfully corked, with Malface remaining relatively unscathed, and they attempt to cross the Columbia River, which goes about as well as can be expected. Now, some of the other shows have kind of strange middles, or sometimes lose steam for a bit after the opening, but they all have good endings, and Trail to Oregon is no different, as the Bandit King is defeated poetically by his own branding. The family come to Malface's rescue, but they soon find themselves in need of saving. Luckily, an unlikely ally helps them to the other side. Seeing Joey in a lobster suit, it says it all. This work is a masterpiece. And the gang finally makes it to Oregon. All seems bright ahead for them, but have you forgotten? A doctor arrives and tells them the bad news. One of them has dysentery. And this is what separates Oregon from all the others. The genius of the ending. Yes, you too, dear viewer and watcher, can pick which member of the family has dysentery. Well, I mean, you can. Or you can pick the grandpa ending, which is obviously canon. Fight me, you know I'm right. I don't know, I just think it's the most fitting, and his performance is by far the best. He puts the most heart into it. When you gotta go big. Luckily, whomever you pick, they survive, and the family makes it to Oregon together. But what's this? Could it possibly be a lake? For them to go skinny dipping? Yes, Freud is celebrating down in hell somewhere for getting one over on us once again. But the ending is a brilliant celebration of the whole family together, just naked in a lake. So that's The Trail to Oregon. I love everything about this show. Of course, as always, I'm biased towards the writing, but I can listen to the soundtrack over and over, and the ability for the crew to pull it off so successfully with limited props and a small stage is incredibly impressive. It's nice to have a musical in this day and age where you've got high wires and stunts and effects that anyone can do. And how. Many people have done their own productions, and I would love to do one someday, if only I could sing.
Nope.
Or maybe I don't need to be able to after all. Now, to return to the content mines and suffer through more Heathers, it's going to be an interesting one. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.